Officer Jennifer Walsh's role in this story represents the rare kind of courage that separates those who simply wear the badge from those who honor it. She wasn't a seasoned veteran, wasn't a high-ranking official, and didn't have political connections to shield her. She was a 3-year patrol officer doing her job on an ordinary day when she pulled over a speeding vehicle. She expected a routine interaction, nothing more than issuing a ticket and moving on with her shift. But when the window rolled down and she saw the badge of Chief Morrison, she instantly stepped into a situation that would test her integrity, her career, and her willingness to stand up against the very system she served. Most officers in her position would have hesitated, backed down, or allowed professional courtesy to override their duty. But Walsh chose truth over comfort, responsibility over fear. When Morrison claimed he was responding to an emergency, Walsh didn't challenge him rudely or aggressively. She simply asked for a confirmation from dispatch, the same way she would with any driver making an excuse to avoid a ticket. Her instincts weren't driven by suspicion or disrespect. They were driven by procedure. But the moment she requested verification, she triggered Morrison's anger, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she dared to question someone he believed was untouchable. When dispatch confirmed there was no emergency, instead of backing down, instead of pretending the lie didn't matter, she did her job. She wrote the ticket. She held him to the standard she would apply to any other citizen. And in that moment, she crossed an invisible line drawn by years of corruption and intimidation. The next day, when she was summoned to Captain Rodriguez's office, she already sensed something was wrong. She had no history of misconduct, no complaints, and no disciplinary actions. Yet she was being confronted with a formal accusation filed by the most powerful man in their law enforcement network. Morrison had accused her of disrespect, of interfering with supposed emergency response, and of acting unprofessionally, all blatant lies meant to force her submission. It was a tactic he had used many times before. Punish those who challenge him, reward those who obey. And yet, even as she realized her career might be in jeopardy, Walsh did not distort the truth. She calmly explained the facts. She mentioned the footage, the dispatch records, the body cam recording, all evidence that backed her integrity. Her bravery didn't come from lack of fear. It came from choosing what was right despite the fear. She knew the stakes. She knew that crossing a police chief could mean being reassigned, ostracized, or pushed out of profession altogether. She had seen what happened to others who didn't play along with Morrison's demands. Officers transferred to undesirable posts. When Chief Morrison walked into the courtroom, he carried himself with the arrogance of a man who had never once been told no. His posture, his expression, even the calculated confidence in each step he took showed a man convinced that this proceeding was nothing more than a formality. He wore his uniform like armor, his polished badge gleaming, as if it alone could shield him from consequences. Sitting next to him was an expensive private attorney, a choice that signaled he expected privilege, exemption, and control, everything he had grown accustomed to throughout his career. But the courtroom is a place where titles don't matter, rank holds no power, and lies eventually unravel. The moment Morrison opened his mouth, his arrogance began to reveal the true depths of his corruption. He started with polite manipulation, framing the entire situation as a misunderstanding, as if Officer Walsh had simply misread the situation. It was a tactic meant to minimize the issue, to portray his actions as innocent rather than deliberate deception. But as questions became more direct and evidence became harder to evade, the polished facade slipped. Morrison shifted from charm to defensiveness, from defensiveness to irritation, and from irritation to outright hostility. When he claimed he was always potentially responding to emergencies, it wasn't just a weak excuse. It was an insult to every officer who actually treats emergency procedures seriously. His explanations grew more desperate, more convoluted, and more revealing. Every answer he gave exposed not just what he had done, but how he thought. To him, his role granted him special interpretation of the law, special exemptions from accountability, and special authority over the truth itself. As the judge pressed him, Morrison tried to shield himself behind law enforcement secrecy, implying that sensitive operational details prevented him from providing answers. He wielded phrases like command authority, professional discretion, and operational judgment, as if they were magic spells capable of erasing evidence. But the courtroom is not the street, and the judge was not another officer to be intimidated. His vocabulary of manipulation fell flat, and his lawyers' attempts to redirect the narrative only emphasized how fragile their excuses were. The real unraveling began when Morrison grew frustrated that the judge wasn't giving him the deference he believed he deserved. His tone sharpened, his posture stiffened, and his words grew reckless. He questioned the judge's authority, suggesting that traffic court judges had no business evaluating the actions of police chiefs. He claimed that the realities of law enforcement were beyond the court's understanding. But his most shocking moment came when he declared himself the law in his jurisdiction. Those words didn't just reveal arrogance. They exposed a deep, dangerous belief that he was untouchable. In that single statement, he revealed the core of his character, a man who believed the badge elevated him above the Constitution itself. The courtroom fell silent because everyone understood what had just happened. In declaring himself the law, Morrison crossed from mere misconduct into open defiance of the justice system. It was a confession of his worldview, an admission that he did not see himself as a public servant but as a ruler. His statement stripped away every excuse he had tried to offer. No one who respects the law speaks that way. No one who values accountability would dare make such a claim. His words didn't just incriminate him. They validated every concern raised by Officer Walsh, Internal Affairs, and the countless officers he had intimidated over the years. Even as the judge corrected him, reminding him that no one in America is the law, Morrison clung to his delusions. He insisted that courts had no right to question his decisions, that police discretion superseded judicial review, and that emergencies didn't require verification when he was involved. With each word, he dug deeper into the hole he had created, fueled not by logic but by ego. His belief in his untouchability blinded him to how he sounded, how he looked, and how completely he was destroying his own defense. By the time sentencing approached, his arrogance had turned into panic. Gone was the confident stride, the smug expression, the dismissive tone. In its place was desperation, a man realizing too late that the courtroom did not operate by his rules. His declaration of supremacy, once spoken with force, now echoed back at him as evidence of his corruption. His downfall wasn't caused by a single lie or misstep. It was caused by the belief that he was above accountability. And the courtroom, a place built on principles he had long ignored, became the stage where his arrogance finally collapsed under the weight of truth. Judge Caprio's role in this case becomes a defining moment where judicial integrity meets the unchecked arrogance of a man who believed authority placed him beyond consequence. When Chief Morrison walked into the courtroom, he carried himself not as a citizen facing charges, but as someone convinced he was untouchable. His posture, expressions, and even the tone of his responses revealed that he had grown accustomed to people stepping aside, offering favors, and accepting his power as justification for anything he chose to do. But inside that courtroom, for the first time, he encountered someone who wasn't intimidated by a badge, a title, or a reputation. Judge Caprio's calm, measured presence served as the perfect contrast of Morrison's inflated self-importance, setting the stage for a powerful reminder of what justice truly means. As the proceedings began, Morrison's confidence didn't waver. He attempted to justify every action by reminding the court of who he was and what position he held. He spoke as if his years of service entitled him to leniency or even immunity. His attitude made it clear that he had spent so long being protected by the shield of authority that he no longer recognized the line between leadership and domination. When the judge asked simple, direct questions, Morrison's answers were laced with entitlement. He interrupted, dismissed concerns, and even attempted to challenge the legitimacy of the court, believing the weight of his title alone would tilt the scale in his favor. But Judge Caprio remained composed, observant, and unwavering. The turning point came when Morrison boldly proclaimed that he was the law in his town. The entire courtroom fell into a tension-filled silence. It was a statement dripping with ego, a declaration that revealed his distorted understanding of power. Instead of humility, he presented superiority. Instead of accountability, he showed defiance. But Judge Caprio did not react with anger or shock. Instead, he allowed the statement to sit there, exposing Morrison's true mindset to everyone present. That moment revealed more about Morrison's character than any police record or incident report ever could. It was the moment his arrogance became undeniable even to those who had once respected him. Judge Caprio then dismantled Morrison's facade with calm precision. He explained that no individual, regardless of position, can claim ownership over the law. The law is not a weapon for the powerful. It is a shield for the people. He reminded the courtroom that authority is a responsibility, not a privilege, and that leadership requires humility, not dominance. His words cut through the false confidence Morrison had carried for years. Every sentence delivered by the judge restored balance in a space that Morrison had tried to tilt in his favor. The judge emphasized that the justice system exists to protect fairness, not to uphold the ego of those who believe themselves superior. As evidence of Morrison's repeated misconduct was reviewed, Judge Caprio's disappointment became visible. Not emotional outrage, just a deep, steady disapproval of someone who had forgotten the meaning of their oath. He acknowledged Officer Walsh's courage and integrity, highlighting the importance of officers who honor the uniform instead of exploiting it. In doing so, he made it clear that true law enforcement relies on accountability, transparency, and respect for the very system Morrison tried to undermine. Morrison's attempts to downplay his actions only made the judge's stand stronger. When it came time to issue judgment, Judge Caprio delivered the maximum penalties with firm clarity. His decision was more than a legal punishment. It was a moral message. He removed any illusion that authority grants immunity. He protected the values that define a fair justice system and sent a warning to anyone who might believe they are bigger than the law. Morrison felt the weight of real accountability for the first time, and the courtroom witnessed a powerful example of how justice should function: calm, firm, and unshakably principled. The consequences of Chief Morrison's downfall extended far beyond the walls of the courtroom, reaching into every corner of the department he once controlled with an iron grip. In the immediate aftermath of Judge Caprio's ruling, the reality of losing his badge, his authority, and the identity he had wrapped his entire existence around began to settle in. For years, Morrison had operated under the belief that his position made him untouchable. But the moment accountability caught up with him, the illusion shattered completely. His dismissal wasn't just a loss of a job. It was a collapse of the power structure he had built around fear, intimidation, and entitlement. Officers who once felt obligated to follow his lead were suddenly free to speak openly about the atmosphere he had created, one where favoritism replaced fairness and loyalty meant compliance rather than integrity. What followed inside the department was a period of uncomfortable introspection. Leadership had to confront the reality that Morrison's behavior didn't happen in isolation. A system had allowed it. Some officers admitted they had seen signs but stayed silent, either out of fear or because they assumed nothing would change. Others felt guilt for moments when they had looked away, convincing themselves that challenging a chief was futile. Now, with Morrison removed, the department found itself at a crossroads. Either they could continue old patterns, or they could use this moment to rebuild trust from the ground up. That shift didn't come easily, but it was necessary. The corruption exposed through this case became the catalyst for internal reforms, new oversight measures, and clearer guidelines on accountability. One of the first steps taken was establishing an independent review committee to address officer conduct, ensuring complaints wouldn't be filtered or dismissed by those in power. Training programs were restructured to emphasize ethical decision-making, transparency, and community-first policing. Officers were encouraged to report misconduct without fear of retaliation, something that would have been unthinkable under Morrison's leadership. The department also invited community leaders to participate in discussions about restoring confidence. For many residents, Morrison's downfall confirmed suspicions they had held for years, suspicions that some officers were protected while others were punished unfairly. Addressing those concerns became a priority, and although the path was difficult, the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths marked a turning point. Meanwhile, Morrison's personal life took its own dramatic turn. The power he wielded had seeped into the way he interacted with family, friends, and colleagues. Without the badge to validate his authority, he faced the uncomfortable reality of who he was without the position he'd used as a shield. Some people distanced themselves, afraid of being associated with his disgrace. Others confronted him directly, expressing frustration at how he had mistreated them or used his rank to manipulate situations. For the first time in years, Morrison found himself stripped of the automatic respect he had once demanded, forced to face the consequences of behavior he had long dismissed as leadership. Officer Walsh's role in the aftermath became equally significant. His courage sparked conversations about what true integrity looks like in policing. He became a quiet example of the kind of officer communities hope to see, someone who valued honesty over hierarchy. Fellow officers respected him not because he exposed corruption, but because he did so without seeking recognition. His actions demonstrated that protecting the uniform sometimes means standing up to the people who misuse it. Many younger officers later admitted that Walsh's decision gave them confidence that doing the right thing was still possible within a system that often seemed unforgiving. The community, too, felt the impact of Morrison's downfall. Residents who had lost faith in reporting concerns began to feel more comfortable approaching the department again. Programs aimed at bridging gaps between officers and civilians gained traction, and community forums became spaces where real conversations took place. The idea wasn't to erase what had happened, but to learn from it. People understood that one corrupt leader doesn't define an entire department, but accountability is essential to moving forward. As the ripple effects continued to unfold, Morrison's case became a reference point in discussions across law enforcement circles. Training academies and leadership seminars use it as an example of how unchecked authority can erode trust, damage morale, and ultimately destroy the very principles officers swear to uphold. By breaking down exactly how power had been abused and how accountability restored balance, the case became a lesson engraved into future generations of officers. It taught that authority is temporary, but integrity defines legacy. The legacy that followed this case did not emerge from the downfall of Chief Morrison, but from the strength of those who chose integrity over convenience at every turn. As the dust settled and the department began rebuilding itself, the true impact of this moment became clear. It became more than just a story of one corrupt leader being exposed. It became a symbol of what policing looks like when honesty outweighs fear, when duty is stronger than ego, and when the badge stands for something deeper than authority. Officer Walsh's quiet courage grew into a powerful reminder that a single act of integrity can recalibrate an entire system. He never sought recognition, never asked for praise. He simply did what he believed was right, even when doing so placed his career and safety at risk. His example carved a permanent mark on the department's culture, reminding officers that real bravery isn't always found in dramatic rescues or high-stakes operations, but in those moments where one chooses truth over silence. As the department moved forward, stories of Walsh's decision became part of the training curriculum for new recruits. Cadets listened to instructors retell the events not as a cautionary tale of wrongdoing, but as a blueprint for moral strength. They learned that wearing the badge means carrying the weight of responsibility every hour of every day, even when no one is watching. They were encouraged to understand that respect isn't demanded. It's earned through conduct, compassion, and consistency. The case taught them that accountability is not the enemy of law enforcement. Rather, it is what legitimizes it. Those who abuse power may temporarily escape consequences, but ultimately, integrity prevails because it is a foundation that keeps communities and officers connected. Veteran officers also began reflecting on their own roles within the department. Many had spent years navigating a culture of fear, avoidance, or silent compliance, convincing themselves that challenging someone like Morrison was impossible. But seeing Officer Walsh stand firm made them reconsider those assumptions. It reminded them that the uniform is a commitment, not a shield, and that failing to act can be just as damaging as committing the wrongdoing itself. They began mentoring younger officers differently, encouraging transparency, open communication, and respect for the justice system. Slowly, the internal culture shifted from one shaped by hierarchy and intimidation to one shaped by accountability and shared responsibility. The community felt the change as well. People who once viewed the department with suspicion found new reasons to trust again. They saw officers engaging more respectfully, communicating more openly, and responding to concerns with seriousness rather than dismissal. This renewed trust didn't happen overnight, but each positive interaction rebuilt a bridge that Morrison's leadership had fractured. Community events, town hall meetings, and youth outreach programs became meaningful opportunities for connection instead of mere formality. Residents who had grown accustomed to keeping their distance from law enforcement now found themselves participating, speaking, and collaborating. The department's commitment to rebuilding relationships showed that they were not running from their past. They were learning from it. Leadership outside the department also took notice. Police chiefs from neighboring areas discussed implementing similar reforms, emphasizing mental resilience, ethical policing, and transparent accountability. Workshops and seminars featured the story not as a scandal, but as a transformation. Proof that confronting corruption does not weaken a department, but strengthens it in ways that last for generations. Morrison's downfall became a reminder that authority misused eventually collapses, but integrity only grows stronger the more it is challenged. In time, the story drifted beyond the boundaries of a single town. It reached academies, leadership trainings, and community centers that use it as a model for real justice. It showcased that some of the most important victories in law enforcement don't come from dramatic confrontations, but from quiet acts of courage that hold the entire system together. The case became a story parents share with their children when teaching them the meaning of honesty. It became a lesson taught to recruits about the values that give the badge its worth. It became a source of pride for communities that finally saw justice prevail in a system that often feels uneven. And at the center of it all was a simple truth. Integrity endures. It outlasts intimidation, outshines corruption, and restores faith where it has been damaged. The legacy formed after this case wasn't about the fall of a corrupt chief. It was about the rise of a standard, a reminder that real justice is carried not by those who wield power recklessly, but by those who honor it with humility, courage, and respect.